If you've seen some of my videos, you've probably briefly seen this before, wondering what is going on. People deep within the Breath of the Wild community have heard of it and known of it since September 2020, yet only whispers appear here and there, and even the most seasoned glitch hunters barely attempt this ridiculous glitch, which makes you wonder why this hasn't been looked into. It's because you'll probably be incredibly frustrated trying to do it. It's called Super Menu Overload. There have been thousands of glitches and discoveries in Breath of the Wild in the past 4 years. Larger finds such as wind bombs and memory storage, which completely bend the game engine or allow you to attain weapons otherwise impossible to get, seem to get a lot of attention of casual and hardcore fans alike. But even though Super Menu Overload has the ability to literally freeze time and projectiles in place, have objects and limbs go missing, and throw a storm of weapons in 5 seconds, no one talks about it. Let me explain why. First, because there is barely any community research on this glitch, I'm going to try to explain Super Menu Overload in my way that's easy to digest. Breath of the Wild's performance is intertwined between two things: memory, which is how many objects are in a certain area, such as bushes, trees, weapons, NPCs, etc., and additional processing, such as NPCs walking around, metallic items getting conducted, or objects swaying in the wind. A simple in-game example of this is Korok Forest, where simply looking around causes the game to lag because of the sheer amount of grass, Koroks, trees, and bushes the game has to process to animate to sway in the wind. But what happens if you put hundreds of objects into the game that are just sitting there, not moving or causing additional stress on the game? The game does lag a tiny bit, but since you're not actually doing anything, the game runs fine. This is the core behind Super Menu Overloading, which keeps the processing load down while pushing its memory limits extremely high. This is proven by having a pile of duplicated weapons on the ground, where by itself it doesn't seem to affect the game too much. But as soon as you run an electric current through it, the game's frame rate takes a heavy nosedive, trying to process the electric effects through 100 weapons it just touched. So the general idea of Super Menu Overload is to push beyond that limit in a low memory area using menu overloading to duplicate weapons and overload the Switch's memory, all while keeping the game from crashing. You're probably then thinking, how many times do you have to duplicate weapons to get to this point? And the answer is give or take 600 times. Yep, you heard me right, this takes anywhere from 25 to 45 minutes depending on how much trouble the process gave you. And on top of that, if you want to perform the technique that was on the very beginning of the video, it's another 5 to 10 minutes on top of that. This is why even the most dedicated of glitch hunters would rather not even attempt this, because even with this proven method being found, every time you do it isn't going to be exactly the same. That's right, it's not even consistent, and the unstable nature of this glitch still makes the game crash a lot, because you're constantly teetering on the limits of the game engine's capabilities. This means many attempts up to 45 minutes of duplicating weapons is wasted, as when you crash you start all over again. For this video, I've duplicated somewhere around 10,800 weapons for capturing examples, testing, and retrying failed attempts, all to make this project happen. This is not for the faint of heart and is arguably one of the most painstaking glitches to perform in Breath of the Wild, next to memory storage. That said, there's one Japanese user by the name of Noho who has performed this glitch hundreds of times, and has recommended the most consistent method to perform this glitch. So, if you want to challenge yourself at home, here's how to do it. But be warned, if you do not have any experience with menu overloading first, this may be incredibly difficult for you. Or, if you're just curious about this ridiculous process, I'll show you how it works. First, come to this location in Osira Plains, as this area never rains and has very few objects in the surrounding area. This is important because storms cause a heavy load on your game and cause you to crash, and having fewer objects in the area makes your process much smoother and much more consistent. To start, you'll need 5 to 6 multi-shot bows to perform a regular menu overload, but I recommend having a couple extra. If you don't know how to do this, you'll want to look up YouTube tutorials for that. Then comes the next part, duplication. This can be performed with most weapons, but you'll want to shy away from any elemental or most ancient weapons, as their flashy effects have an additional load on the game and cause you to crash much more easily. We personally recommend the Royal Halberd and the Royal Guard Spear, as these weapons are not as taxing on the game and keep the frame rate relatively high. This is performed by switching to another weapon, then throwing it, causing the weapon to be thrown to the ground. But it never leaves your inventory because you technically had a different weapon equipped. Now, do this around 600 times. This is much easier said than done, as during the process, the weapons will sometimes randomly not start to appear in your hands, stop desyncing, or the desync pattern will change. This can be fixed by unequipping a bow or a shield on your back to draw weapons again, spamming bow and weapon to force the game to desync again, and dropping and picking up the bow to reboot the desync process. Like I stated earlier, every attempt can have different problems, and this inconsistent nature is what makes this glitch difficult. Remember to pause or take breaks if you're getting tired. Once you get to around the 600 weapon mark, you'll want to start paying attention to Link's hands. You know you've achieved super menu overload when Link readies to throw, but there's nothing in his hands. If you see this, congratulations, you finally achieved your goal. In this state, there can be varying effects, such as arrows staying in place, body parts that go missing, or even different effects with different duplicated weapons, such as bullet time on open ground. But now you're wondering, how did you do that throwing trick against the Lynel? Well, prepare to throw even more, and attempt something called throw Gatling. First, let's explain what we've done so far with an analogy. Let's imagine building a dam with a reservoir. First, menu overloading and duplicating weapons is a dam building process. Once the super menu overload is achieved, the dam is done and ready to hold water. Throwing weapons past the 600 weapon mark throws the item, but it never appears. These invisible weapons are the rising reservoir, filling with water. They're being held in place and staying until you let go. Like a real dam, if you throw too many weapons into this buffer, which in this case is 99 additional weapons, the game will crash, aka the dam will break. But if you throw the weapons safely, then perform an action that will release the weapons all at once, it will be a controlled release of water through floodgates, or in this case, thrown weapons, just like a dam releasing its floodgates. This is called throw Gatling. Like I stated before, this is still inconsistent and has many underlying rules, but this is the most successful method. Perform your super menu overload here, then once you know that it's active, run up to the Lynel here. Make sure to run up to it, then pull out your weapon to make it perform its explosion attack. Don't worry, you'll be fine. This attack's fireball requires too much memory to perform, so when it smacks the ground, it freezes, unable to move. This is when you start your throw Gatling process, by simply throwing two weapons over and over right next to the Lynel. Two Savage Lynel swords seem to have the least crashes in our experience. Remember, you cannot throw more than 99 weapons. Once you've done enough throwing damage to kill the Lynel, hold ZL to engage the Rook's protection, and unequip whatever equipment you have on you. Sit back and enjoy the fireworks. Breath of the Wild continues to have a myriad of secrets even 4 years after release, and the discovery of new glitches keeps the game constantly fresh, even if some of these finds are painstaking. If you enjoyed this or at least found it interesting, give us a like. We continue to show what new things you can do with Breath of the Wild to this day. And for everything else, stay tuned right here on GameSpot.